welcome everybody. So show of hands real quick. Who has the worksheet we sent you downloaded and ready for action this morning? Kylie, I think we can drop it in the chat so that you have it, because we've got a toolkit to go with this week's experience. We're up in the game a little bit. Also, logistics. Reminder that if you have questions or if you need anything, you can always go into the chat, and Kylie is going to be watching everything for us. Okay, let me just bring everything up. First things first, we are going to do a quiz together, because we all love doing that. My first question for everybody is, what adventure are you on? Also known as, why are you here? Because if you are here, it's because you have decided to shift something in your life. And we are curious, because what you are shifting and why you are shifting it is really important in the conversation of the future you. And so we're trying to get a bit of our idea of who we've got there. Not surprised, we have a bunch of people, so we've got 6 responses. I know we've got a few more people than that in there. So a couple of new jobs, couple of pivots. As you can see, this is anonymous, so we don't know who you are, which is curious. The new job one is winning quite a bit. Not entirely surprising in today's crazy COVID world. It's a bummer. But this helps me, so let me just write this down. Helps me get it. So we've got new job, pivots, and a little bit of a power up in the organization, which is fantastic. Okay, so let me come back to you. So why is this all important? Because one of the first things that I like to share with everybody as they are thinking about their career adventure and what it is they're trying to do is that the first question that you should be asking yourselves, as a room full of Cinderellas, is, what is my goal? Where is it I want to go? And what it is I'm going to try to do? Because if you think about, like, let's use the example of I want a new job, thinking about who do you need to talk to and what is your customer journey to sell the product of you. And just a reminder for those of you that haven't heard this, in this working world that we live in, you are a product. And the product that you are selling to people is your time. And so if you're thinking about this, you've got to start thinking about, like, what is my customer journey? How do I help it, make it easy for people to buy my time? And that the value of that time is the things you are able to do in the future. So it's very different from the current thinking around, if I just put my resume together and send it, people will know how to hire me, because we all know that that doesn't really work anymore. So how do you start thinking about that? And so really having a clear idea of what it is you're going to accomplish is important. Plus, every journey that you're on is going to be slightly different. And like selling any product, context matters. Context matters a lot. It's the same way, and I'm going to give a very generic example and compare you to soap for just a second. How you would sell soap in a grocery store is very different to how you would sell the same soap in your own e-commerce store, or if you were putting it on Amazon. I want you to start thinking about, where are you being purchased? How are people purchasing you? How are you doing this? Because the more you are strategic and thoughtful about what that is, the easier it is for people to understand what it is they're buying, and the easier it is for people to buy you. And I think, as I've said a couple of times, we make it way too hard for people to buy us. Now, I know I've said a lot, and there's a lot of information here. This is why I sit here and I go, look, pick an adventure, pick the one you're on, and figure out how to optimize for that, because you can always start a new adventure. So hopefully you've also got The tool set, which we are now going to be including in all of these shows to help you with this, because the feedback we've been given quite a bit already is, oh my God, Joanna, you're too fast. I'm trying to take notes and all of that sort of stuff. So we've created these so that you have somewhere to take notes to remind yourself what is happening on these shows. Bonus points in about, and Kelly, am I giving the right number here? In about 4 to 5 weeks. Yes, we will be backdating and posting these shows live on YouTube. Now, the people who watch it there will not get access to the toolkits as you guys have, but we will be posting them on YouTube so that you can go back and watch them anytime and actually refer back to your notes. So we hope that not only is this a great experience today, but this continues to actually deliver for you long term. So let's actually look at the toolkit and take a look at what it is you need to ask first. And the first question, once you've decided which adventure you are on, is who are the decision makers? And so let me, as we always do a bit of a volunteer session. So who is on the new job adventure? Who would like to volunteer? I see the hands going up. We've got some regulars. Teresa, Peggy, I'm glad you put your hands up. Props for you. But is it Adi? Am I getting your name right?
Yeah.
You look like a new face on the party. So we all know I like to pick on new people. Plus, this is an easy one. So you're on a new adventure path. So as you are, so no judgment on this, but just to give me a little bit of a frame, like what is it you are, what is your area of expertise?
I'm in a hardware development,
Hardware dev role, okay. And do you know what kind of a role you are looking for?
Yeah, I'm looking for a engineering leadership role.
Okay. So thinking about that, and feel free to take notes on your sheet. And as you guys are thinking about, like, who do you think are the people that you are going to need to market yourself to, for lack of a better term, in this next phase?
So leaders in the industry, whether there are CEOs, if it's startups, or a director and VP levels in bigger companies.
Okay. Anybody else?
Colleagues, that's always good.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think that's the main thing.
Okay. So for those of you that are thinking about this, I think those are both really great examples of people to talk to. But you're also thinking about, as you're thinking about the entire customer journey. So like winning for you, Adi, is somebody offers you your dream job, right? And so you think about that entire process, thinking about industry differently, like industry leaders versus colleagues. Industry leaders is to get you part of the consideration set, to actually help them know that you exist. Colleagues, which by the way, are my favorite people to help you get your next dream job, and we're going to talk about them too, are also to get you in the consideration set. But once you're in that consideration set, there's a bunch of characters that you have to talk to, right? Mm-hmm. First and most often is the recruiter. And you see me doing this with my hands, because what I'm talking about here is the concept of a sales funnel. And if you guys have been, I know you're all professionals and think about this, as you think about the sales funnel, that first step when you're selling a product is, are you in the consideration set? Then they're in the, well, do we want to talk to this person some more? And then there starts to be some decisions. Same thing happens for human beings. So in that, yes, you're in the consideration set, like your resume or whatever the material is that they're like, ooh, we want to talk to Adi, is there. The next person you are probably talking to is a recruiter. Mm-hmm. And this is a bit of a setup question, but what do you think the recruiter's job is?
To find who not to move on in the list.
Okay, that's an interesting.
I think with with today that there are always too many candidates, they're looking for reason to cross people off.
Yeah, how do you cross? So there's two things that they're doing. One, not yet, you're absolutely right. They are crossing people off the list. They're like, nope, 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 nope. And FYI, I was talking to a recruiter the other day, and when they primarily look at your LinkedIn profile. They are not, your resume happens later down the list and becomes part of your toolkit that they send along to potentially a hiring manager. It is much more likely you're going to get to see a recruiter through a LinkedIn profile. And what they're looking for to decide whether you're on the list or not on the list is literally a 6-second scan. They are looking at your photograph and your header at the top. They are then scanning for logos down the side. If they are still interested, they will look briefly at your schooling and then back up to your about section, because your about section should have a summary. So for any of you who are on the career pivot or job hunt and actually looking for the next opportunity, just make sure those key things are updated on your LinkedIn profile, because that's where people are scanning and that gets you in there. The secondary job of your recruiter, when you're thinking about what their role is in conjunction with you, is actually to sell you through to the interview panel on why it is a good reason for them to spend time with you. In essence, your recruiter becomes your salesperson, right? So as you are thinking about what journey am I on and who are the decision makers, how are you going to think differently about how you have a conversation with a recruiter when you know part of your job with a recruiter is to teach them how to provide value in the future? And so what is going to be important to them is going to be really different. And so really thinking about that. Now, I'm also going to add, because I'm going to take it down a level, once you get through the recruiter and you get to the hiring manager or the team of people that you're hiring for, considering why they care about who you are and the value you can deliver in the future is also equally important. And I challenge you all to really think about that as you go through the interview process, because while it might be the same company, how people are going to think and what they care about is going to be different. I'm going to use a really, last time I interviewed for a job, tangible example. I got to meet the entire executive team at Pandora when I went to go interview with them. And I know some of you have heard some of these stories, but I knew relatively quickly from doing a little bit of research and talking to some people that I knew worked there, who the people were and what they generally cared about. I knew going into the conversation that the CEO cared an enormous amount about what was my vision and was I a good people leader? Like, was I a kind and generous leader in the way I approach things? I knew that talking to the chief revenue officer, was I going to put a bunch of rules in place that would mean his team would slow down? And would I be loyal to who he was and what he was all about was important to him. I knew that going in to meet with the CFO, that he had taken multiple companies public, and understanding some of the nuance for a finance organization about how to take a company from a startup to a public company needed a whole different set of rules and regulations. So really thought about the individual whys of the individual conversations. Now, when I had the conversations, I validated that that's why they cared, but came in with a little bit of an assumption so that they could understand, because think about your job there. Your job is to actually think about why would they care in the future, what their, not only the company problem was, but what the individual problem was. So I challenge you all in your worksheet is to, depending on where you are in the interview process, is to actually write down who are all of the decision makers as you start to learn who they are and what they're doing, and actually write down before you go into interview with anybody or have conversations, like, why would they care? All the way back up to the recruiter? Because, and Adi, why would a recruiter care?
Well, a recruiter wants to bring value, so he wants the people he decides to move forward to be good, a good fit.
Yeah. And you think about that, like take that to the very base level. What is the definition of a bad recruiter?
That doesn't know how to filter people.
Right. They put the wrong people in the wrong job. And so your recruiter is incented for you to be the right person. So really thinking about that, like, how do you help them make sure that you are the right person and that they can bring somebody different to the table? So really think about that. So at thinking about whether you've got a job you're actually applying for right now, or you're just starting the process, start outlining who your decision makers are. So, okay, Adi, you're amazing. Thank you for sharing. So the next thing, if you move to the next page of your document, the next thing I want to share with you, and this is why you all were here, was this: how do you share your brilliant brain with a graphic idea? And yes, I think it's super important up front to understand the what and the why before you start creating a graphic, because of course, because everybody's what and why is a little bit different on your decision, your graphic may need to be either created differently or have different areas of information. Now, you've also heard me say, and sorry, I was late in getting everything up, so I want to pull up my graphics for you. You've heard me talk about how consistency in who you are and what you're all about is super important. It still is. So I'm not saying create a new graphic for every single conversation. I am saying create a graphic that has a continuous thread throughout, but has a nod to the individual. It's a bit like how we all get advice on how to, how you need to have a different resume for every single presentation. So, where did here they are. Give me just 2 seconds because I'm going to do a bit of show and tell with you. Please tell me this is the right. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to talk you through all of the different diagram types. Current slide. And I'm going to share with you that these are also all real people who have gone through the value adventure with us. And when you go through the value adventure, which is everything from doing market research on you and pulling a bunch of information together, at the end of the experience, not only do you get your value language, but we actually help you craft your graphic that goes along with you. And so this is part of the deliverable that they get. So I'm going to show you the core different kinds and why they're different based on what it is you are trying to do. So I come back to this idea of what is the story you want to tell and why, and different tools can tell different stories. So this one for Olivia tells a story of what she needed to be able to tell in her career adventure, was that she covered multiple areas and that there was overlap between them. Now, I've actually broken them out into 3 because in the way that Olivia needed to have this conversation, she actually needed to do step 1, step 2, step 3, and then she actually has a different graphic where she brings all 3 together as a beautiful Venn diagram and shows the overlap in the middle. This is a really easy way of showing how you can be multiple things and one thing at the same time. It also, especially if you're applying for a job where there's a lot of competition, and you're trying to highlight that something really unique about you, actually showing the overlap of a Venn diagram and how those individual things layer together to make a complete story of you is super, super, super helpful. So the next graphic that I'm a big fan of is the timeline. This is a different graphic that really talks about how to weave a history into a timeline that makes sense. So in this case, Shannon's history was she started out her career as a CPA, and then she got bored of being a CPA and decided to become a lawyer. And then she was like, wait a second, lawyers are just acting on things. I want to be much more in the business, and then became a CFO. And the challenge that she'd had in talking about her background and experience was that the logical path for most people is not CPA to lawyer to CFO, and that her value was really anchored in this idea that she's always looking a little bit around a corner and looking forward to the future. And how did she tell that story while also talking about her really crazy timeline? So if you on your adventure have a career path where you did like 12 different jobs that don't look like they connect, this is a really great way of doing it. For those of you that are on a career pivot, I think this graphic is particularly helpful, because what you can also add to this is, oh, and I would have to go into edit to do that. Let me just escape out of here because I want to show you, is when you are pivoting your career, you're trying to head in a different direction, the additional challenge that you have is you have to say, this is how the past me value can connect to the future me value. So you can add a future Shannon tab in this case, and tell a story about, well, what would she be? So board member, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but how do you think about these future states and actually start to bridge? So if Shannon was having a conversation, she'd be able to take from mathematical theories to critical thinking to business impact to whatever it is, the story it is she wants to tell. So this is, I think, one of the few scenarios where you can take a resume and actually add on a future part of the conversation. Now, is this graphic going to answer all of the questions? Absolutely not. But imagine for a second, and I'm going to go back to Adi's example about how she was using her colleagues as a great way to get in part of the consideration set. What we often forget to do with our colleagues, especially when we're trying to teach them about our new self or something different, is we forget to make it easy for them. Because with our new colleagues, they know who you are and why you're awesome today. They had experience, like, and Peggy, I'm going to pick on you for a second because you're a really great example. Like Peggy and I worked together, I think it's nearly 5 years ago. And while I absolutely knew who Peggy was and what she was all about 5 years ago, my guess is Peggy has grown and changed a little bit because she's had other experiences in other companies. I have no idea what changes and growth have happened in the last 5 years. So I'm actually not 100% qualified to talk about why Peggy is particularly awesome. I have ideas, but that's based on my own personal experience. And what Peggy's job, because if she wants me to start pitching her, is actually to teach me what are the gaps and what are the difference, and then who is this future person that I want to be. And so when you're reaching out to your colleagues and saying, hey, I'm just announcing that I am now looking for my next opportunity, it's a really great opportunity to use a graphic like this to say, you know my history. I want you to now know not only what I want my future to be, but how to bridge what I used to do with what it is I want to do. And you can use the email or the conversation or whatever format that you use to give somebody, in essence, a cheat sheet of doing that. Because I made up Shannon's future. I know Shannon quite well as well. I'd very easily, if somebody called me up and said, what's Shannon all about, just using this cheat sheet, be able to talk about it. It's certainly more useful than my memory and more useful than a LinkedIn profile and a resume. mostly because this is a graphic that's being created for me. Okay, moving on. We're just going to stay in this edit mode just in case I want to do it again. One of the most common graphic types that I use is what I call the hub and spoke. Because the hub and spoke allows you to talk about multiple areas of you, similar to the Venn diagram, but then B, actually allows you to tell a story about who you are in the center of it. And really anchor that into, well, I'm known for, in Sharon's case, multidimensional mapping. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun buzzwordy stuff, right? So the question then becomes, well, what is that and how are you thinking about it? And so when she's multidimensionally mapping, she's considering all of these different areas. Super helpful if you are trying to teach somebody how you think, and especially super helpful as you are thinking about your vision and trying to map out a vision. So if you, when you're going on a job interview, if you have a vision that you are trying to explain to somebody, again, a really helpful way of telling that story. And then last but not least, I also love what I call the process flow. Now you can see, I love a circle because I do think we think circularly all the time. But if in your thinking process, and this was built specifically for Wendy because we wanted to educate, she wasn't even looking for a job. This was educating people she worked with, because Wendy works in a company that she delightfully describes as a bunch of people who are still working in the 1980s, and she is their digital transformation lead. So how does she help people understand how she thinks so that they can figure out how to buy her time just as helpfully? So really great example of how this isn't just for when you're on a job search, but is also for when you are in a job and people aren't getting you. And so we created this for you, and we actually use this to talk about what questions she asks and how her thought processes work to help her guide people to reimagine the future. So there's actually a process and a workflow through it. And going through the value experience, we really found out like almost what was Wendy's operating system. So as you're thinking about that, coming back to with a Venn diagram, are you trying to tell a story of different skill sets that come together to make the new unique you? Are you and that's the Venn diagram. For the timeline, are you trying to bridge between a past and a future that maybe in your past didn't make sense or in your future doesn't make sense? The hub and spoke, which again is probably the most common one to use, that just kind of gives an idea of who you are and how you think. Or do you actually have an operating system that is uniquely you? You can really, and you'll notice I'm a big fan of the Beautiful system. Beautiful.ai is what I use to create all of these. What we created for Olivia at the end of the day is actually a cover sheet that also gave a graphic that talked about both how her brain thought and what she's all about, and really felt that this was far. So imagine now getting this packet of stuff. You are now a hiring manager from people that includes both the graphic and this cover sheet with the resume at the end of the day. Like, it completely changes the game, because it is, as you well know, a very competitive marketplace out there. And you want to make sure you stand out. I know that if I saw something like this, I'd be like, hello, who is this person and what are they all about? Especially if they had done their homework and thought about who I am and what it is I might need as I went through. So I'm gonna stop for a second and open up for questions on the different graphic types, because I want to make sure you guys understand it, and or somebody figured out which graphic type they want to create for themselves. Throwing it out there. Kylie, did we have any questions?
Not so far, no.
Okay.
I had a question. The different types you talked about at the beginning, the importance of your LinkedIn profile. Do you think that, and this is general for everybody, but are there any of these graphics that you would ever recommend going on a LinkedIn profile? Or is it further down the line?
No, I absolutely would. And not only on, and here I'm trying to remember, I think I've even got mine up that way. Let me pull mine up for just a second. Yes, absolutely. Because again, like if, oh, well, see, no, I don't have, see, I have a different thing on mine, but here, I'm sure you've all seen because I intentionally want people to think about other people, which is why my graphic was up there. But for a long time, I had a process flow graphic up there. I think it's absolutely fine to put it up there because again, it's a bit like, I have no doubt that this entire room, if I asked you to do this, could draw the McDonald's arches for me. And the same way, like if I say Nike, what do you see? The swoosh, right? Same, well, we all screw up on the Apple logo, which I think is funny because we shouldn't, but the swoosh is super easy. It's almost like creating your own logo, for lack of a better term. The beautiful thing, however, is because you're an awesome thinking, growing, changing human being, your graphic can actually evolve and change over time. You know, I always think about, there's an executive at Salesforce who's been working with me for the last 4 years about this singular question of who she is and what it is she wants to be known for and how does she teach her audience. And we every year get together and go through the 3-hour experience that she and I do together. It's quite an intensive thing, but go through that whole process and we actually look at what are the previous versions and what's evolving and changing, because the reality is that's part of the fun of being a human being, is it does evolve and change. And so unlike something like the Nike logo, although one could argue like the Starbucks logo itself has changed over time, unlike a product logo, the human graphic can evolve. And again, like I always sit here and I go, gosh, what if, like, imagine I had taken my own training when I had gone out and had all of those interviews with the various different people at Pandora. Imagine if I had had leave behinds with the graphic that were different for what each person needed or the story I needed to tell. And then, because what happens, especially when you're doing a panel interview, what happens is they all come together and they talk to each other, right? They all come in and they share information. Imagine they all walked in with consistent but different graphics. Like, I would absolutely lose my shit on this. I'd be like, who is this person? We're hiring them yesterday, if only for this. Like, unbelievable stuff. And I sit here and I go, if you've had the courage to show up here today and invest in you, you've got the courage to do this. And do we have any guys? No, we don't have any guys on the call. And as a fierce feminist, I want you guys all to knock it out the goddamn park. So color outside the lines a little bit. It is going to surprise people, but I think the surprise in that scenario is a good thing. Now, Teresa, it's lovely to see you, by the way. Welcome back.
Thank you.
It's, you had a question as well?
Yeah, I was one of the pivot your career folks, and I have actually, this is perfect timing, just pivoted my career. I just got a new job on Monday. And so I know my team. It's not a new team to me. It's still in the same company I was with before, but I kind of want to start with this graphic as my kind of foundation of, you know, you remember me from back in the day when we used to work together, and now I'm back and I've got a new timeline. I'm going to use the timeline.
Awesome.
Where else should I consider using this? Is it more for the big kickoff of people getting to meet me, or should I use it in one-on-ones? What do you think?
I think, well, so I think both, because when I think about, and this is actually such a wonderful example. I'm so excited you got a new job too, by the way. Congratulations. Teresa has been through the value experience with a whole group of people, which was very cool. So, you know, when you think about that, it can be that anchoring thing in your individual one-on-ones. And I say not just with your team, but with your new peers and the people you're reporting into. using it as an anchor for everybody in your one-on-ones, and have it as an opportunity to open up the question and say, like, what is it you want to know about where I've gone and what I've done? Because actually that teaching process is incredibly helpful. Plus, and here's my little pro tip for you specifically, for those of you, and this is for everybody when you get your new jobs, you think about what is your first 90 days, and your first 90 days on a job is bananas, because you're having to learn a whole new language, you're having to figure out where the bathrooms are, you're having to figure out the cultural stuff, like what can you wear, and even on this, and now we've got the Zoom/virtual crazy to add to this. And normally when you come in, because you've got to kind of show your value in one area, and then you also need to not be this totally like, I am going to take over the world jerk, right? It's that lovely balance. Is part of what you have to do is manage up through your organization and saying, look here, yes, you made the right decision, you hired the right person. Here, I'm going to show some early value, although yes, you should always go on a listening tour at the beginning, but also with your peers and teaching them who you are and how you can engage with them, because there's something really beautiful that happens. And I know you've all seen this. When you have somebody who shows up who messages confidence about who they are and what they're all about and the value that they bring, but also curiosity and excitement about how to play with you in the future, you're all like, bring it on, I'm in. And you have to have both, because your confidence and curiosity for you is why you get excited, but there's their perspective of your confidence. They have to believe in you, and their excitement about your potential. And so everybody you have to engage with has that happen. And of course, and not last but by any least, but with your team too. What I often see with new leaders, especially when you have people reporting into you, is you are in a really interesting power dynamic, because you've suddenly become the person who decides other people's future, who now will report into you. And so there is this kind of constant, the itty bitty shitty committee goes a little crazy and goes, I need to, like you are providing value to your new bosses and going, yes, you made a good hire. Your team is almost immediately going, oh my God, I need to get time on my calendar to tell her how awesome I am, and blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff starts to happen. And because you've all been exposed to some of the Joanna crazy, you know that they're going to regurgitate, look at all of these things I've done. And what you need to know as a leader is what is their potential and what could they do in the future. So if you are, I think, Teresa, that's a really great opportunity. If you introduce this idea of the timeline graphic to them, have your team in their first one-on-one create the timeline graphic for themselves, and have them use that as an opportunity to talk about not only who they were and how they may have changed since you worked with them last, but who is it they want to be, which ultimately, provides you with an anchor of what they want their potential to be, but also, like, imagine for a second your boss actually had that conversation with you. How much would you feel like you matter in their eyes? Buckets, buckets and buckets and buckets. And it's genuine, because I know you, because you are no bullshit and would be genuine anyway, but it's a really genuine feeling. And that using the timeline graphic, not only for yourself, but with your team, is super helpful. So I have no doubt we're gonna actually pivot to the next thing. So moving to the next sheet, the brainstorm, and you guys can do this after the call, but I'd love you to at least start trying to do this now, is going through all of the things that you would want to tell somebody. Because the hardest thing to do, you will notice on all of the graphics that I showed you, only let you have 3 things, because we cannot remember more than 3 things. There's in design, in storytelling, in every measure that they look at what do people remember, you do more than 3 things and people's heads start to spin. Now, you'll notice that in the graphics, when I showed them to you, they have kind of sub-language underneath, which actually I think is more of a prompt for you, but you do need those 3 top categories. And so to find the 3, I always sit down and say, look, throw it all out there, like put all of the spaghetti on the wall, put all of your ideas. And I've said brainstorm up to 10 different areas that you can cover. And then use that and say, okay, which of these are potentially duplicative? Which of them, so which ones sound a little too much like each other? Like, and by the way, you can absolutely, in the initial brainstorm, use Joanna's boring words like, I'm a really good strategic thinker, I'm really great at connecting people, I'm really good at getting things done, etc. It's a good place to start. We just don't want it to be the finish. You can have all of those words in there, and you start to really think about which one of the, so I'm really good at building relationships, and I'm really great at making connections between people, are the same thing, right? So really that you can cross one of those things out. Another thing that I look for in the stack of 10 when I'm helping other people build their value adventure graphic is I'm looking for incongruity. So I had a woman I was talking to earlier this week that we were doing this with, and she is incredibly introverted, exceptionally detail oriented, but she has the tenacity of a bulldog. And I was like, wait a second. I said, you've got this very gentle, detailed, quiet personality. And yet when you get a bone, you are like, watch out, here I come. She's actually known within her community for negotiating other people's electricity bills, cable bills, what have you, down for them. I was like, you need to start a side hustle and get paid for this, but that's a separate conversation. But the incongruity of this quiet, but this tenacious person is something that's really original and standing out. So as we looked at all of her words, we broke it down and said, look, there's something really lovely about incongruity, because again, it's about finding something that is really different and surprising, because that's the part of the story. So really start with at least 10. If you don't know what other words to put on there, you're like, I don't know, I can only think of 5. Anyone guess what my advice is on this one? Have you all been paying attention? Go ask people. Find people who already know you and love you professionally. Just a reminder for you, those of you that haven't heard, I love your families. I'm sure they are awesome. They are the worst source of data for you on your professional journey, because they don't know who you are as a professional unless you specifically work with the person. And even then I'd put a question mark against it. I know my family basically think I'm nuts. I'm totally good with that, but they are not the best source. So go find people who you have worked with. Also, on when you're doing that market research, don't limit it to just mentors or bosses. Your peers are really good people to find out what that language is. If you are feeling super brave, your peers that you did not get along with very well are also a really great source of what would that language does. It's a really FYI pro tip on the side, great way of building a bridge with somebody who you had a slightly contentious relationship with. Because when you ask somebody for advice and their guidance and their opinion, they hear that they matter and they want to build a relationship with you. Just a tip there. And then last but not least, I am also a big fan of reverse mentoring. So going to somebody who is either part of your team or a more junior member of the organization and hearing what they have to say is often quite eye-opening. And Adi, did you already create yourself a graphic while we were sitting here? Overachiever, I think this is fantastic. I am particularly excited about that. Thank you. It's leadership, market, and engineering. What's your word in the middle? I can't read it because I'm a bit blind.
Great product.
Oh, interesting. Awesome. Well, see, it's that easy, folks. Well, hang on, where are we? Okay, it's that easy. So throwing it out, any more questions on how this works or what to do? Again, really a big fan of Beautiful.ai for creating graphics. Also, if you're not using it, and both of these on their entry level are free, Canva.com awesome product for making good graphics. It gives you all sorts of extra goodies. Kylie, can we shoot links to both of those tools in the chat?
Absolutely.
Plus,
sorry,
bonus, Canva is owned and run by an awesome lady person supporting women in business. And Kylie, did you have a question?
Yes, so we have a question in the chat from, excuse me if I pronounce your name wrong, Cheng. She's asking, could you elaborate on the third graphic? What's the key component of having an operating system graphic?
Oh, well, there isn't one key component. What I'm talking about here is actually a much bigger conversation around the theory that we all are our own operating system. Because you think about, like, let's talk about software for a second, really, or any supply chain. You have 3 layers of your software. There's the database layer. So what are all of the parts and pieces? There's a business logic layer. So how do you think about those parts and pieces and how they work together? And then there's the UI layer, which is all of this. And how are you teaching and telling people what you're all about? And if specifically your work is actually to change people's mind in the future, or is to drive change within an organization, modify things in the future, how you teach other people how to modify things in the future is really complicated. And my guess is, well, actually, I know that to be able, if you are really good at doing that, being a future modifier, for lack of a better description, you have a way of doing that. And your way of doing that has usually a combination of who you are as a person. So what is your style? So you all know my style is a bit out there with the sequins and all of that. I think both Peggy, Kelly, and Kylie can tell you that this is who shows up 24/7, just maybe not with the sparkles. And this is a pretty standard part of who I am. So what is your style? So are you, I'm a bit of a Pied Piper when it comes to driving change. I'm all like, come on behind me. I will take all the bumps and bruises out front. Y'all will be fine, sort of thing, right? I know that in Wendy's case, she is certainly just as visionary, but her style is a little less Pied Piper. She actually gets everybody in front of her and she moves them along. So that's her style and who she is. But then what are the questions and what are the considerations that she asks within her operating system? So who does she need to connect with? What are her standards? Like, so you think about the database layer, like when you think about a database, it's structured. It's not this malleable thing. So what are the questions that she always asks and need to be there for her operating system to work? It's, I put it on there because I think it's a really important one. And I actually believe that we all should start thinking about what our operating system is and how to describe it to other people, because that's the thing that we are buying from each other. It isn't a, here are top 10 ways to find out what your operating system is. Like if this is something that is important to you to find out and to start exploring, the value adventure starts to uncover that. I don't think it goes all the way. I'd say the woman I've been talking about earlier, who I've been working with for 4 years, the 3-hour session is where we really get into our operating system and how she thinks and how does she teach other people how she thinks. It's a lot richer. That said, I think everybody has one, and I think everybody's is unique and how they move that forward. That was a long answer, but then I tend to do long answers. Does that help? Are we saying your name correctly? How do we say your name?
That's correct. Thank you. This is really appreciate.
No, absolutely. Fantastic. Okay. Drum roll, please. Kylie, it is your turn. I'm going to put this, oh no, you're on here too, to do our announcement, because if you remember when you signed up for this, we said that one lucky person who signed up for the show was going to get a private one-on-one with me. And so Kylie, oh, shut the door. I love the new graphic.
Yay. All right, here we go.
fantastic. Congratulations.
There we go.
Yay. Exciting. So we will be reaching out to you with instructions on how to set up your time with me. Bonus points for me is I'm going to learn what you've been doing for the last 5 years and how to bridge that gap. So you will also be coming out. So more information for you on what to expect and all of that, but congratulations. Again, remember, every time you sign up for the show, you get the opportunity to win. And yay, Kylie, I freaking love the graphic. It's fantastic. Super happy about that. I want you all also, because this is all about you guys, to come back to the Live with Joanna show Slido poll. And I want to know from you what other topics you would like to cover. So what do you've heard a lot from me today. I had all sorts of good stuff to say. What is it you would want to know? We're going to see any answers in here. You can, so here's the good news. If you're like, I want to think about this, you have access into this poll until end of day tomorrow. So if you want to come back and answer this question later, you absolutely can do that. You can also, at any time, email us at hello@theamplifylab.com. We're always curious to hear. What we'd also like to know from you is how likely you are to come again. Give us a little bit of a net promoter score. Do you think this is a good idea? Do you want to do more? Hooray! We've got some people there, and it is okay to put in a 1 if we thought we blew it. It's good for us to know. So we'd love to hear back from you on what it is you want to hear and what it is you would like. So before I say thank you and goodbye and let you guys all go and have your awesome Friday, I wanted to leave with one more pro tip for all of you. I am particularly obsessed if you are on an adventure to find a new job or to pivot your career, that really where all of the activity that is going on is happening is on LinkedIn. And to Adi's recommendation, your colleagues are one of the best opportunities. And I got to witness a masterclass, in essence, at least I told her it was a masterclass, on how to not only amplify yourself, to get yourself in the consideration set, but also to amplify others. So I am very lucky to know Jory Desjardins. She is one of the original founders of a company called BlogHer, which had a fantastically successful exit and got sold to She Knows. And she is now a venture capitalist in residence and a whole bunch of other things. And just today, she wrote a really amazing article about her observations of women in the workplace. And you can see that she not only talked about what did she think, but also talked about a lot of the women that she admired and what they think. And by the way, I thought this quote, I'd like to get married, but I'm optimizing for somebody who's already been married because I don't want this whole marriage experience to be new to them, was literally the funniest thing I've read all week. I thought it was genius and absolutely describes the ridiculous nuance of getting a job, and in this case, a board role. But she wrote about a lot of different people and quoted them and linked to them and put graphics. Now this is, as I said, it is a masterclass on how to do this. This was a really rich area. She then gave me a whole ridiculous comment at the end and put in one of the graphics and quotes that I had put in there. And then you'll notice from what I showed earlier that when she posted it, she tagged all 4 of us in her post. And she sent us a private message saying, hey, I've tagged you, which then, of course, because I was all like, look at this, my friend said nice things, I'm going to share. I then reshared on LinkedIn and reshared on Twitter. Again, a really simple and easy way So Jory, in this case, not only got to teach her network through LinkedIn, how she thinks and why she's awesome, but also brought 4 other women along with her in the same way. And I think that is a really amazing way, especially as women, for us to help each other. So as you're thinking about other things that you can do on LinkedIn and even on Twitter, but I think LinkedIn, importantly, there's really amazing ways to do that. So I hope you all found today incredibly helpful. Just a reminder, we do these shows every Friday at noon. 3 of the 4 shows each week are different content. So we've got coming up, we've got how do you optimize your career adventure? So if you're like, what is this career adventure thing she's talking about? How do you optimize that? We're also, I think the week after that, going to talk about experimentation and how you can use experimentation to crush it professionally. And then we're actually going to have a conversation specifically about pivoting. And I challenge you all to remember that pivoting doesn't necessarily need to happen outside of a company. You can always pivot within a company. I have done it multiple times. If anybody has said, gosh, I like the idea of being an entrepreneur in a company, this is the way to do it. You can always go to our show page on Eventbrite and sign up. We also once a month do the standard, how do you ask the question, what do you do? Joanna special, where we have conversations and we'll have a transformation. Those we always recommend for people who haven't been to any of our training. And for any of you that are guys are regulars, you will start to say, hey, we're going to cancel your ticket, but you're more than happy to come because we want to leave those shows open for folks who have never been before. And then last but not least, a heads up for everybody, just a reminder that your ticket price today, plus a nickel, is actually now stored as a credit with us that you can use in the future to purchase products, whether it's the value adventure or one-on-one time with me, as either a discount against those products or for future products. We have a lot of new products in the pipeline that are smaller challenges, different price points, very much a whole choose your own adventure thing. So there's a lot of things coming. Poor Kelly and Kylie are like, would you please slow down? This is crazy. So we're gonna have a lot more of those coming soon. So you'll be able to do little challenges and little opportunities. But for these shows, each week you will get the credit, you'll get the toolkit, and you'll get the time. And we hope that all of it is well worth it for you. So thank you all for coming. Peggy, I look forward to seeing you soon. Teresa bailed already. So Adi, I wish you the very best of luck in getting your new LOL, and good luck with your adventures. And I hope to see you back again soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Ultimately, we're here to help you figure out how to teach other people who the future you is, so that you can be you in the future. Because the clearer you are about who you are, what you want, and teach other people why that's awesome, the more likely you get to be you. I know, it's a bit of a circle. I'm Joanna, your potentialist and fairy godmother, and I wish you the very best. Thanks for coming.